Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of the first mobility sessions at this 2019 edition of the Smart Mobility Congress. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for joining this great session. Thank you most of all for all the panelists and speakers agreeing to join this session and make this a wonderful interaction and talk about shared mobility, mobility as a service, and how we can make it happen worldwide. Thank you for the organizers to bring up together such a great panel, and I am happy to chair this session. My name is Victoria Markewitz. I'm from Berlin, Germany, and I am coming from the company ViaVan. ViaVan is a technology company for the world's most efficient on-demand shared ride-pooling systems. So we work together with cities and public transport operators just as authorities to bring on-demand shared rides into their premises. So this sits really at the core of what the session will be about. How can new mobility modes such as ride pooling, ride sharing, ride hailing, but also car sharing, car pooling, how can all of these new means of transportation be integrated into the greater public transport and mobility ecosphere of any city in this world? On the one hand side, we have great studies out there. For example, BCG has just recently published a study on ride pooling, how much it can improve on efficiency, relieve congestion, relieve from emissions. On the other side, there are also critical voices. What happens with all those micromobility bikes and scooters that are thrown onto the streets and into rivers? So how can we make this work? What does policymakers need to do in order to enable and improve an on-demand mobility world, integrated with public transport, and provide value for citizens? So in this session, we have two great panelists that will be joining the stage from the public and from the private side, discussing these topics, how to make MaaS happen in their cities. So first up, we have Monique. She is the vice mayor of the municipality of Eindhoven. So we will have the perspective from Europe, from the Netherlands, how mobility as a service worked there, and how it can be a role model also for other cities. So welcome, Monique.
Thank you very much, and welcome. I'd like to welcome you to Eindhoven. I'm vice mayor of the city of Eindhoven, in charge of mobility. Eindhoven, located in the south of Holland, part of the Brainport region, and a city of about 235,000 inhabitants at the moment. And not too far from Brussels, Düsseldorf, Amsterdam, as you probably know. And Eindhoven has a history of Philips Electronics, a history of DAF trucks. Big companies who are actually within our city for, well, over 100 years, more than 100 years, 120 years, Philips. And Philips, DAF, companies which have gone through very good times, but as you can imagine, also bad times. But at the moment, the region, Brainport region, Eindhoven, Philips and DAF are companies who are doing very well, and also part of an ecosystem within our Brainport region, which we within Holland call one of the three main ports. When we're talking about main ports, we're talking about Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, we talk about Rotterdam Seaport. And Brainport, the fast-growing economic region for the Netherlands, with a very high percentage also of economic growth in the last years. Eindhoven city, known for technology, for design, for innovation, for knowledge. Also a city working very well together within this triple helix: government, industry, and knowledge institutions. A university, technical university. And also a region, I mentioned already Philips, which is known for what we sometimes call the cute technology, known for consumer products, but has developed over the last years also with big companies like ASML, like VDL, within a region from cute more to what we call deep tech technology, leading in chip manufacturing, health technology, but also a region of automotive, an automotive hotspot. As you can see here, a few examples from, I mentioned already, the Technical University. You see at the left side, you see a very futuristic car from the solar team from the Technical University. Underneath, you see Lightyear, the first solar family car, which is released just a few months ago. You see also car sharing system, Amber. You see the Automotive campus, which is a campus especially for the automotive industry, very close to Eindhoven in Helmond. And Eindhoven in the future is changes. I mentioned already, it's a very fast-growing, economic, strong region within the Netherlands. And it's a region also where a lot of people are coming. We sometimes call it our struggle, our battle for talent, because as you can imagine, in the high-tech region, there's a lot of people working with a technical background. So we have a lot of international people coming to work within the region, coming to live in the region. As you can imagine, that also gives quite a lot of pressure on our housing capabilities. So within the next few years, we are actually planning within the city center, around the central railway station, we're planning to have, about 10,000 homes within the next years. And you can imagine that that's quite a challenge for us as a city. And with so many more people coming to live and coming to be and work in our city center, that means that we actually have a lot more mobility. Economic growth gets a lot more of mobility and more pressure also on public space. And this success and growth also means that our economic top locations actually face at the moment already a lot of mobility problems. And that is the challenge also for us as a city for the coming year. How do we keep our cities livable, but also accessible within the next few years and in the longer future? High-tech design for societal challenges. I mentioned already Eindhoven, the region known for technology, but also design, innovation, and just the combination of these things, which in smart mobility is a means, not a goal. And our vision within that, because if we look in the longer future with this challenge we face about more people, pressure on our city, on accessibility and livability, it's important to have a vision. And the vision we have is that with other cities, within other Dutch cities, and actually we realize we see the same within other big cities, of course, that the knowledge we have, the vision we have, is more than within the next few years. It's really a vision which we have to have for the next, well, let's say 30 years. Because Dutch people enjoy an accessible city, but also like to live within a clean city, a healthy living, and a place where it's not only nice to work or to commute, but also it's nice to live. And our strategy is, within our strategy, we are actually following 3 different lines. We're creating mobility as a service ecosystem. We work conform an integrated smart mobility system, and very important, we're creating preconditions for success. Open data, cooperation with public and private companies, and especially on that last one, I'm giving you later in this presentation an example. Mobility as a service, I mentioned it already, as one strategy line is actually the key in what we're planning within the next few months. We're working at the moment at a network of shared mobility solutions within our city, which are giving people a choice. At the moment, we're in the process of implementing preparation of an active MaaS system within the beginning of 2020 in the city of Eindhoven. And I'll give you a view on that on this little video. I don't think there's any
means to develop new infrastructure or to subsidize public transport. Maybe MaaS, mobility as a service, can offer solutions. As a traveler, you want to get from door to door without worry, whenever you want and however you want. For instance, with a shared bicycle, shared car, taxi, public transport, or any combination of those. Using MaaS apps, you can pick and choose from every possibility, and planning, booking, and paying is possible as well, in every app. 7 pilots by 7 regions and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management are ready for launch to collect experiences with traveling using MaaS in the entire country. The pilot in the Utrecht region works with an app that enables citizens of Leidse Rijn, Vleuten, and De Meern to plan, book, and pay combinations of different transport options. To make the Eindhoven region better and more sustainably accessible, 2 large employers will start using MaaS, and more will follow. The pilot in Limburg focuses on cross-border traffic and brings sustainable mobility within closer reach. In Twente, Groningen, and Drenthe, MaaS utilizes the entire transport system for both vulnerable and non-vulnerable target audiences, so everyone can travel easily and affordably. The 6th pilot is aimed at the region of Rotterdam, The Hague, and especially Rotterdam-The Hague Airport. Its core subject is accessibility by offering a diverse set
I don't know what's happening on the video. Okay, maybe. Okay, I think it's better to follow, because if there's any time we try to go back to the video in that. I was talking to the MaaS as a mobility as a service, and you were getting an insight on how it's actually going to work. And just maybe as a summary, just short, very short to you, that MaaS actually is working via an application, what we're planning in Eindhoven as well, an application in which you can actually plan, you can book, but also pay at the end your journey. And the way in Eindhoven we're planning with a pilot to do that is to make people more aware that there's other possibilities, as the video said already, of taking other ways of reaching their destination than only by car. And the important thing on that, of course, is that it's easy accessible, that it's easy for people as well, and that's the app about to convince people that it's another way of reaching your destination. We're starting the pilot in Eindhoven within the company ASML, as I mentioned before, and with our own members of the city of Eindhoven, working for the city of Eindhoven. I mentioned the 3 strategy lines. The second one, after MaaS, the second one is to come up with integrated mobility solutions. And the integrated mobility solutions, and I have a few examples for you on that, are not only on intelligent traffic lights, which you can see here on this slide, but it's also a combination on the intelligent traffic lights at the moment. We're upgrading our traffic light system in order for cars in our ring road to travel faster, smoother, and so we create a better ring road for congestion. But on the other side, on the integration, we also facilitate an app in which we have for cyclists an app on particular points, crossroads, where they actually get in the advantage situation. So the integration of intelligent systems, one side for cars and other side for cyclists, we're actually looking for to implement more already within the future. The third strategy line is, of course, the precondition for success. Because the precondition for success not only depends on us, it depends on us as a government, local government, but it also depends on the collaboration we're working on. The collaboration with, for example, I mentioned technical university, collaboration with private companies, and very important, collaboration with your own inhabitants. But at the end, of course, it's our inhabitants or employees of companies who are actually needing to look at other ways of traveling towards work or towards a city center or commuting. And I'd like to tell you an example of the way we implementing this cooperation, collaboration within the Brainport area. I mentioned already the success of Brainport, this triple helix, can be attributed to cooperation, as well on a regional, but also on a national and international level. This example is what we call the run deal. The run actually means a location within the region of Eindhoven where the big company ASML is located. And ASML is a company which is developing very well economic growth and also takes on a lot of new people, about 250 new employees per month. So you can imagine that on the mobility side, a company like ASML faces quite a challenge. And we face a challenge as a local government, but also the regional government and the national government. So the cooperation really is made in a deal we've made with ASML, the different governmental, local, national ministry, as well as the regional government levels, in which we're working together on short, mid and long-term measures, working on proven measures, but also working on new pilots together. An integrated approach in which it's not only about infrastructure, but it's also about smart mobility. It's also about how a company goes with policies on employees. And what is the deal? The run deal is actually on mobility services, implementing a MaaS system, as I mentioned before, on transport systems, but also on traffic services like what's the easiest way to find your way. And it's on infrastructure, not only motorway, but especially on cycle paths. Our infrastructure on cycling needs to be ready, needs to be having the capacity actually to make sure that if people take a fast bike, not the one you see here, but an electric bike or maybe a bit more, then we actually need to have the facilities ready for that. And one part of the infrastructure is also hubs. We're looking into different smart hubs where people can come with car or come with a bus and then from there on take another way of coming to ASML, for example, with a bicycle, with an electronic scooter, or maybe a small bus transport, autonomous or whatever system. What I'm actually telling you is the way we within Eindhoven, the Brainport region, on this working together, on this collaboration between private and public sector, which is quite a challenge for us, but it's also a challenge for a company like ASML with a very different background, with a very different, of course, aim and ambition, and a different role they have in society. It's very difficult, of course, but at the moment, I have to say, it goes very well in that. So I'm telling you about that smart solutions from our perspective, actually contribute to these ambitions we have and the challenges. And that shared mobility service in our city, a growing city, and I can imagine that you recognize that within your city and within your country maybe, that offers also people a freedom of choice. And we're looking at solutions that help inhabitants and visitors to park cars maybe at a hub location and from there on take a different way of transport. I like to conclude. I mentioned already smart mobility is a means. It's not a goal in life or not a goal as a government we have, but it's a means of reaching our goal, our ambition of in a growing city to keep a very good balance between a healthy, livable city, between a sustainable city, as well as an accessible city. Smart is not a thing of light years from now onwards, it's now, and we're working on that now. And it's more than technology. It's also how can we think about smart ways of maybe sharing transport, smart ways of maybe different ways of how people behave in choosing a car or a bus or a bicycle or whatever. But it's also a way of smart, how can companies work together in different systems like MaaS, or maybe even sharing data on that. For us, it's important we're working on it now. We see an urgency in our region. And the interesting thing is, as I mentioned, it's not only us, we as a city, but it's our environment, it's our companies who are seeing the urgency for the future. I'm sharing our experiences, our ideas, so I'm very interested also to hear from you, and I know there are a few minutes on that to see how you can help us to realize our aim. Thanks very much. I'd like to finish actually with one of our icons in the city, which is a new cycle path we implemented, or we actually built about 5-6 years ago. Very futuristic, but one of the icons of our city. Thanks very much, and I think there is a few seconds left, which was probably for the video, so excuses on that, but thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for sharing those insightful thoughts on Eindhoven and how mobility as a service works in the Netherlands and how you also cooperate with the private industry. So considering the time and the audience, we have around like 2 to 3 questions Monique can answer. Is there anyone in the room that would like to ask a question? So if not, you can still take some time. I have some prepared. So I really like the aspect of keeping cities, have a sustainable MaaS approach. So if you take Eindhoven, what would be the 2 to 3 get things right or key lessons learned you have taken that you could share with other cities that are interested in implementing a sustainable MaaS solution?
Well, as I mentioned, we're working on getting it worked in Eindhoven as one of the pilots in Holland. And for us, it's very important, of course, to also to have our different car sharing systems ready for that. Because if you actually ask people to use another way of coming to work, then of course you have your car sharing systems ready for that. Maybe your bike systems. We're working on to park and ride hubs on that, but not only park and ride, but also park and bike rides. So you have that system ready for that as well. The other thing, of course, is that you need to have insight in what are people needs, what are people wishes, because of course they have a way of going to work, and how do you actually convince them, help them making other choices? Very important to get an idea about that. And then, of course, you have to help them also in taking another way of transport. So then, of course, it's important that you get an idea about how you convince people, because it has to be, well, either easier, quicker, faster, cheaper maybe as well. So there are different ways we're implementing. So these three things are very important on that.
Thank you.
If there's time.
Okay, so the video is back.
The Netherlands has, according to some, Europe's best infrastructure. Still, it's getting increasingly crowded in and around the cities, both on the roads and in public transport. Outside the urban areas, accessibility and affordability are under pressure. It's not enough to only add financial means to develop new infrastructure or to subsidize public transport. Maybe MaaS, mobility as a service, can offer solutions. As a traveler, you want to get from door to door without worry, whenever you want and however you want. For instance, with a shared bicycle, shared car, taxi, public transport, or any combination of those. Using MaaS apps, you can pick and choose from every possibility, and planning, booking, and paying is possible as well, in every app. 7 pilots by 7 regions and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management are ready for launch to collect experiences with traveling using MaaS in the entire country. The pilot in the Utrecht region works with an app that enables citizens of Leidse Rijn, Vleuten, and De Meern to plan, book, and pay combinations of different transport options. To make the Eindhoven region better and more sustainably accessible, 2 large employers will start using MaaS, and more will follow. The pilot in Limburg focuses on cross-border traffic and brings sustainable mobility within closer reach. In Twente, Groningen, and Drenthe, MaaS utilizes the entire transport system for both vulnerable and non-vulnerable target audiences, so everyone can travel easily and affordably. The 6th pilot is aimed at the region of Rotterdam, The Hague, and especially Rotterdam-The Hague Airport. Its core subject is accessibility by offering a diverse set of transport modalities. And finally, there is an app for the Zuidas in Amsterdam that offers full-fledged alternatives to lease cars during the coming road work-packed years. 7 pilots, 7 apps that will make traveling possible throughout and outside of the country. Together with transporter providers and MaaS providers, the Ministry and the regions want to optimize the entire mobility system based on anonymous and aggregated data. That's how we move towards a sustainable transport future, together.
All right, so considering the time, I would suggest to postpone the questions to the coffee break right after the second keynote speech. So if you have any questions, stick around for that coffee. But thank you very much for joining us for this great keynote speech.
Okay, thank you.
So coming up, I am especially proud that in this keynote phase, so both the first keynote speech as well as the second keynote speech and me as the chair is 100% female in this mobility ecosystem. I think this is a rare occasion, so I'm very proud of that. And please welcome Mrs. Alarcon. She is the founder and CEO of Social Capital, and she will be representing the private side in her keynote speech. Now that we've heard from Eindhoven that they want to work together with the private side, maybe she has some interesting ideas how to bring her business model also to the Netherlands. Welcome on stage.
Thank you, Veronica, for your presentation. And I have to say that it's always a pleasure to present at the Smart Mobility, at the Smart City Congress here in my city, in Barcelona. And I have to say that I've seen this Congress growing year by year. And this is thanks to all the private and public stakeholders that we are working on mobility around the world. So I would like to present Social Car, that is the first peer-to-peer car sharing platform in Spain. We launched in 2011, and we learned a lot during the last 8 years. And I would like to talk about benefits of this service, not talking more about challenges that, of course, we got. And yeah, what we do is we are a marketplace where we have, on one side, we have a fleet owned by private people. We don't own a fleet ourselves. So cars are from the people in cities. On the other side, we have citizens renting cars nearby. So, as I said, what we learn about it is that there's different impacts. On one side, there's an environmental impact, an important impact. That is that peer-to-peer car sharing is addressing a massive asset misallocation. As you already know, cars are used 5% of the time, 2% of the time. So that means that 95% of the time, cars are sitting idle in cities. So the first move is to share those cars. After exploring what's the use of these cars in cities, what we know is that peer-to-peer car sharing is contributing to empty city streets. That means that sharing your car, one car shared means around 8 or 10 cars above the street. So we can replace the use of these other cars. And this is a very interesting data that we got from our platform. What we know is that from car owners that are unsubscribing the platform is because they are selling their car. From those selling their car, 40% they decide not to buy a new car, but 60% is replacing the car, but is buying a newest car and a more efficient car in terms of emissions. So, as a consequence, the fleet age in our platform is around an average of 7 years old compared to 12 to 13 years old age of Spanish fleet, for example. On the other side, we analyzed that there's a huge economic impact on citizens, either car owners or citizens renting others' cars. So we moved to the ownership to pay-per-use, and car owners are sharing the burden of owning a car. So the car is now an investment. It's not an expense on the familiar budget anymore. On the car owner side, the earnings per year could be around 7,000 euros per year. And on the driver's side, they are saving around 4,000 euros per year. And also an interesting data is that we are creating a new revenue for the tax authorities. As you know, when we start talking about sharing economy and sharing platforms, it is used to say that we don't pay taxes and users are not paying taxes. So that's not true. We, of course, are paying taxes as a platform, but also users are paying taxes for this new economic activity they are developing. So, yeah, there's also a social impact on peer-to-peer car sharing that is changing citizen behavior in terms of mobility. When a car owner receives a booking and is going to earn, I don't know, 100 euros, they are rethinking how they are going to move around city. If they are renouncing to use private car and going through public transport. Also, what we have seen is that the most valuated for the user is not the kind of car or the age of the car or the proximity, flexibility, is the relationship with the owner. So what they like is to have access to someone who can share their cars, and they are helping them to earn money, or they can agree on terms of when picking up the car or leaving the car, whatever. So this is very valuable for the users of our service. So just to finish with benefits and impacts, what we already know is that when we are talking about future mobility, there's 4 pillars that they are always mentioned by everyone. One is that future mobility will be connected, of course, will be electric, driverless, but is going to be shared. And this is due to the work that all platforms we have been developing for the last years. People is already convinced that we are going to share assets, because owning 1 car per family or 1 or 2 cars is not feasible anymore. And lately, what we have seen is that we had an impact on industry. For example, on insurance industry or car makers, everyone is talking about sharing cars. But I remember at the beginning, there were not insurance for this service. And now, after 8 years, what we have is a tailor-made and digital insurance for people using both private cars for their use or for renting. So things are evolving and in positive ways for the mobility and mobility in the cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mar, for this great presentation and also keeping in time. So we can have a lot of room for questions also for you. So is there any spontaneous question that wants to kick off the Q&A? If not, I just go ahead as well, and maybe I have some time for another question to think about. So what I would be interested in, your business model is currently operating in Spain.
Yeah.
So does culture have an impact on if peer-to-peer car sharing works, yes or no? So coming from Germany, and every German is very, very fond of their own cars, lending it to a complete stranger might be a little bit awkward. So is there a cultural aspect to your business model?
Yeah, this is what everybody thinks about this kind of platforms, that in each country is going to have a different approach and a different impact, cultural impact. But what I learned is that there's no cultural issues. I remember, in fact, I met the guys who set up the first peer-to-peer car sharing platform in Germany. And in Germany, they received the same feedback. Germans, we don't leave the cars, but in Spain, everyone is going to leave the car. I received the same feedback. In Spain, no one is sharing the car, and in Germany, they are more serious. They are going to share the car. They are more organized, and that's not true. We have peer-to-peer car sharing platforms everywhere in the world, and now they are accumulating a huge number of cars, and it is our responsibility as a platform to build trust in between users. So we developed lots of trust tools to ensure that the use of the cars is positive. In fact, we can say that the incidents are less than 1%. So people used to treat better the car of another person than their own car.
Wow, interesting. Any question from the audience? No. Yep. Is there a microphone from the tech side? Is there? Yeah.
So you showed some projected values for savings for drivers and for car owners, like 7,000 and I think 4,000. Mm-hmm. How is the calculation for drivers done? What is based on?
This is what is this based on? Those numbers are based on our experience. We have around 3,100 users now in the platform. So yeah, it's what we have. We've been learning from all the earnings they got during the last years.
Hi, my name is Florencia, and I wanted to ask you if regulation has been a barrier for the establishment of this platform. And sorry, another question: has regulation been a barrier in different cities? So I'm guessing Madrid has a certain regulation, but maybe others have other issues.
Yeah, well, in Spain, regulation that is applying to this service is the regulation that is applying to rent-a-car industry. And this is a national regulation, so we don't have any, we don't have any impact from municipalities regulation. It's national. So yeah, the thing is that this kind of service was not regulated. When you go to the LOTT, that is la Ley de Ordenanza de Transporte Público, de Transporte Terrestre, perdón, there's any article talking about a private owner renting their own car. But what we did is to accomplish with all the obligations for a rent-a-car company, but to translate that to a private car owner in terms of taxes and insurance and security norms, norms. So in our case, we didn't have any important issue.
How do you manage logistics? I mean, when somebody has to pick one of those cars or has to give it back, is there like a personal connection between the driver and the owner, or how does that work? Or you have like parking lots or something?
Yeah, we have different options. We started with the traditional option that is 2011 when we started. The car owner received a message, accept or not the booking, and they meet to exchange the keys of the car and to sign the agreement and everything. After some years, what we offer to our car owners is parking slots in the cities, in Barcelona and Madrid, to leave the cars there, and then we manage the exchange of the keys. We also have technology, but as I said, we have cars from different brands, different ages, and still already is quite challenging to install technology in cars from different features. So yeah, we have these three options. Thank you. Oops.
I'm wondering if there's any unintended consequences or unanticipated uses. I mean, we saw in Airbnb that ghost hotels were forming as a result of a peer-to-peer service. So do you have any experience of people buying up fleets and using them in that way?
Yeah, the professionalization phenomena. No? Yes, as I said, the car is with this model is becoming an investment. So yeah, we had people that just start with one car, and when they said they start earning money, they put another car in the platform, and yeah, we have this professionalization effect. And yeah, there's people who is buying cars to rent on the platform, but on the other side, you always will have people that is not owning a car anymore. So the effect is the same.
Hi, here, Celeste from Garnet. I wanted to know if you are thinking about using other modes of transport, also like motorcycles or boats, maybe?
Yeah, we analyzed having bicycles, scooters, motors, everything, and what we decide is to concentrate in four wheels, in cars, vans, whatever. But yeah, we launched in last April. What we prefer, in spite of putting other vehicles, is to growth in other sharing cars options. So what we did in April is to launch a ride-hailing service in Barcelona. Now we are operating with cars that are driven by professional drivers, and we prefer to. And this is urban mobility that is really complementary with peer-to-peer car sharing.
So could we please finalize the round of questions? So last question from the audience. There will be time later after this keynote to meet at the coffee machine. But yeah, last question from the audience.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering, since your platform is a car sharing platform, such as other car sharing platforms, do you think that giving the option, the alternative of another mode of transport to people that normally don't have a car, and now they have a car, do you think that's adding traffic to the road network and having impact on congestion and pollution, like people would otherwise travel on transit or bicycles, etc.? Thank you.
Yeah, well, as I said, not owning a fleet, we don't think that we are adding cars to cities, but we at the opposite, we are promoting people not owning a car, just paying for the use. But what we have seen is this new thinking about how I'm going to move around the city. So, and what we need is what we already have, that is lots of options of mobility. So people is just thinking on what to use: public transport, motor sharing, bike sharing, car sharing. So what is adding value to the mobility in cities is having different options, not only one option, because one option is very difficult with only one option, it's very difficult to fight against the bad mobility, that's these traffic issues, etc. But yeah, what you need is to the intermodal mobility.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mar, for your contribution. So this concludes the keynote phase, wrapping up both sessions. We've heard from both the city perspective and from the private perspective. What I found most striking from the city perspective was that cities should be kept livable. This really stuck with my mind, and mobility is just a facilitator. Smart mobility is just a means, not a goal, and that other goals should be there in cities. I think this is really a great vision other cities can embrace for a more healthy, sustainable, and accessible city. Also, that smart is just more than technology. I've experienced from first-hand experience that it's about people who want to drive change. If there's not a change leader in an organization that also wants to enable maybe a more agile organization with public institutions, change is very difficult to happen. So I think it's great to add that smart is just more than buying software. And on the private side, what I think is also always great to see that the pie does not get divided, the pie gets bigger. So both riders, drivers, and the government benefiting from a new business model shows that the mobility and the surplus pie can increase for everyone involved. As well as there's, from a personal perspective, I found most striking that the highest or the most important point for peer-to-peer car sharing is the personal relation to the driver and the rider instead of driving a fancy car, so that there's always a social aspect in peer-to-peer car sharing. Thank you very much for those great two keynotes. We will have 15 minutes at the back to have a coffee break, so you can mingle, network, discuss mobility as a service. Right afterwards, here on stage, we will have a panel that again will be joined by public and private sides. So please be back on your seats in time at 35 around. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the coffee break comes to a finish now. So coming up with the next panel discussion and presentations, I would like to ask you to soon find your seats again, get seated, and enjoy the panel discussion and presentations. And for that, I would like to introduce you to the moderator, Ms. Maita Fernandez. She has home advantage. She's from the city of Barcelona, and she's a project coordinator for mobility and infrastructure. So please welcome her on stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining this session that I hope that you will find so exciting as I do. So I want to just share with you some of the ideas that have been presented before. The cities are under pressure. We are reacting to different inputs, but we share quite a lot of considerations about urban mobility, the use of technologies, and maybe you will just join me thinking that mobility is a driver for the new urban era. So I just want to introduce the panelists. You will see different options from different cities. The first one is let me check my notes. The first one is Mr. Shuhei Okuno from the city of Yokohama. Please, welcome. Have your seat. He is the Deputy Director General for Climate Change Policy. So he will present, you will see the approach from a huge mega city as Yokohama, 3.7 million of inhabitants. Just let me share with you that in the metropolitan area, we are 3.6 million. So you can see the scale of population that Mr. Okuno is dealing with. So as well, please let me welcome him on the stage. And again, I take my notes. Mr. Makers. Please come. He is the mayor of Hertogenbosch. I learned that is Den Bosch. And he's the chairman of the Netherlands Smart City Strategy. So as well, you will see how his city, more or less 140,000 inhabitants, more or less, somewhere. They are facing a strategy for new challenges on mobility. Then, well, I want to warn Luis Puerto, who is, well, he needs no presentation, but just in case there is someone who doesn't know him. He is the director of the RAC Foundation. He is an expert of a great reputation in mobility. And then, last but not least, Mr. Patrick Vergriet from the city of Dunkirk. Welcome, please, who will share with us the option of his city that is as well more or less 100,000 inhabitants somewhere, 91,000. What? Donc, please come and share with us your presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shuhei Okuno from Yokohama City, Climate Change Policy Headquarters. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to speak. Today, I will talk about Yokohama City's new mobilities initiative that aim to contribute to SDGs. To respond to the Paris Agreement and the IPCC 1.5 degrees report, the Yokohama City is advancing zero carbon Yokohama, which means carbon neutrality by 2050. We are also carrying out initiative to solve social and economic challenges and balancing environment. Sorry. Yokohama has 3.7 million people and about 120,000 places of business. The Yokohama SDGs Design Center, which started this January, is a new system that uses the power of people and companies to solve environmental, economic, and social change by an integrated method. we are creating new solutions by coordinating a variety of stakeholders' needs and seeds. Not even a year has passed yet, but 13 projects are already underway. One of the projects utilizes mobility in old housing complex areas. In Yokohama, about 60 of citizens live in suburban residential areas. At these large-scale housing complexes built long ago, buildings are deteriorating and means of transportation for the elderly are lacking. Therefore, the SDGs Design Center is coordinating a company, Monet Technologies, and local groups to demonstrate on-demand buses utilizing ICT. This service provides freedom of movement just by using a smartphone application to input a boarding time, a location, and destination. We aim to realize a livable city for parents with children and elderly people by providing such new means of transportation. And second project, we are carrying out in Minatomirai 21 district, a city center. We are coordinating with Will. Will is a startup from our city to run a sharing experiment using cutting-edge electric personal mobility. We are revitalizing the area with businesses, tourism, and more by seamlessly linking indoors and outdoors and improving the area's accessibility. The third project is the decarbonization of public transportation. We introduced Toyota's fuel cells buses as our public transportation. Additionally, the startup Ugrena has developed biomass fuel made from plants. Yokohama is cooperating with Ugrena to promote the adoption of low-carbon fuels. They will fly on biomass fuel by 2020 Olympic Games. This is the future of Japan. The fourth project is the utilization of mobility in disasters. Japan suffers many disasters every year. Also, Japan land area is only 0.25% of the world, but economic damage from disaster is around 15%. This summer, large typhoons and heavy rains struck Japan twice. Electric vehicles function very well as power sources during disasters. Due to the recent typhoon, a long-lasting blackout occurred in Chiba Prefecture near Yokohama. Nissan cooperated with the city of Yokohama to dispatch electric vehicles to the stricken areas, which played important roles as infrastructure, including powering light sources and reaching smartphone. With adoption of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, which represent global trends, Yokohama is using mobility as a hook to advance initiatives that coordinate with a variety of stakeholders. Mobility provides solutions for environmental and economic and social changes. It is necessary for city administration to cooperate with various stakeholders in order to carry out these initiatives. Yokohama will advance the solutions to social changes and the creation of added value, promoting initiatives toward a sustainable society and decarbonization. It is the Yokohama SDGs Design Center that coordinates the stakeholders and work on the initiative. I could saw various mobility in Barcelona yesterday, and we have to realize new positivity in cooperation with advanced stakeholders. Let's make things happen. Thank you.
Right on time.
So please keep your questions, just write them down, and we will have a whole round after the four speakers talk. So please, Mr. Makers, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody, and very welcome here from the city of 's-Hertogenbosch, a kind of smaller city than Yokohama, only 160,000 people. That's a lot of difference between 3.7 million, the people of Yokohama. And 's-Hertogenbosch is a very historic city, and we're very well known for our famous painter, El Bosque, Hieronymus Bosch, and our historic city center. But we're also well known for our data and data science. We have a collaboration between two universities, the University of Tilburg and the University of Eindhoven, and they shared their knowledge to build a new university, especially for data science. And we want to be, as a city of 's-Hertogenbosch, we want to be a responsible, data-driven city. Data as a key enabler for innovation and digital transformation. And we want to focus on the innovations for society and our residents with a specific responsibility. It's responsibility to individual citizens, to have privacy, to do the right thing with public values, but also to solve societal challenges and global challenges. But also we have a responsibility to new technology. We want to be a real partner to corporations to adapt the new technology for our citizens. We don't want to be obliged by digital Darwinism. So we want to be a front runner in data and to use data in our specific society. Our city smart mobility focus, because that's the subject of today. We want to create a healthy, sustainable and inclusive urban living environment for inhabitants, visitors and employers. And we want to introduce sustainable modes of urban transportation and using new mobility services, data and apps. Especially data and apps, that's why we want to be a key player for 's-Hertogenbosch in our proposition to new technology and new companies. And we realize these goals by introducing smart and sustainable modes of transportation, especially electrical bikes. It has gained a lot of popularity, from 20% use to 40% in our city. Our 4-layer sustainable urban mobility plan consists of 4 different layers. The org-ware, otherwise the cooperation with stakeholders like corporations and technology institutes like universities. The mindware, the model shift of what is our behavior and how can we change our behavior, and what do we have to do as a government to change that behavior of our citizens. The software, like apps, tracking devices, data. But I think the hardest one is the hardware, the infrastructure. Because our roads are designed 30, 40 years ago for a car, a bike, and somebody who walks. Are we already ready for new kinds of technology and new kind of mobility? And how do we solve the financial problem with the hardware? So isn't the discussion about the hardware the hazard of thinking, of trying to do new things on innovation? We, in the city council, we discuss a lot about the hardware, and they say we have all our roads ready and everything is well maintained, but are they ready for the new kinds of mobility? When I drive through Barcelona and I see all those electric steps, I'm glad they don't drive those steps in Sertogenbosch, because it will be hazardous in our city, because our roads are not ready for those electric steps yet. I'm sorry, but they're not ready. Our approach on those 4 layers, we firmly believe in that social innovation by technology innovation. So creating social, economical, and ecological value. We don't want to invent things for the end user. We want to invent things and innovate things with the end users. That's very important for the acceptance in our community by using the app's data and software. If they trust the app, if they play their part in exploring the hardware of the software and the apps, they also believe and trust finally the app. And that's very important. Trust is a very important factor in doing the things right for our citizens. And I've got 3 examples of mobility projects. First, the interactive traffic management. With our city lights, we canalize all streams of mobility. Like if you download an app, Schwung app, if you download the app, you have always a green light when you encounter a traffic crossroad. So always green on a traffic light. That's very positive for the bikers in the Netherlands, and we've got a lot of them. Not as a lot as in Yokohama, but we've got a lot of bikers. But also the safety services, like the police, fire department, they also can use the app for using the traffic lights and manage the traffic lights. A second part, we did that together with our Association for Disabled People in the city of Sertogenbosch, is smart parking for disabled people. All the parking spots in our city for disabled people are on an app. And you see, as a person who wants to use that parking spot, you can use it you can see on an app where there is room and where not, and you can reserve that parking spot. And we did that together with a company, an IoT developer, the company of the city of Sertogenbosch, and also with a local NGO for disabled persons. Collaboration between people, government, and company, that's, I think, the main factor of driving innovation. And next generation infrastructures. I said it already, I think the most important part for us as a government is making new hardware, new infrastructure for new smart mobility. And you see on the picture, you see already on the photos, you see some of those new inventions. Like a bike highway, it's a bike highway for especially speed bikes who go like 40 kilometers an hour, so that's pretty fast. And that's where we have the speedway for bikes. And also, in here on this picture, you see a bike path where the car is a guest on that road. So you can drive by your car, but you're a guest. The bikes are the leading partner on that road. And for us as a city, 30% of our model share of mobility is biking. Walking is 25%, and buses is very low because of our great biking system in the Netherlands. I hope you come bike once in Sertogenbosch, and I will invite you over to our beautiful city. Thanks a lot.
Luis, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Yeah. My presentation will be about how a more than 100 years old company like the one I work for is embracing change and adapting to the new mobility era in urban areas. We all know these three big problems we have in cities, starting with the very low occupation of private cars. More than 75% of the efficiency of occupancy in vehicles is lost nowadays in cities, and this is leading to the second problem, which is congestion. We have to know only in Europe, more than 70 cities exist where drivers or people, in fact, lose more than 100 hours per year, in some cases even 200 hours per year in congestion, hours lost, productivity lost. And this is also leading to a third problem, which is pollution, which is killing before time 800,000 people in Europe alone. These big issues that cities need to resolve with new mobility approaches are also being followed by ourselves, by the RACC. RACC was born more than 100 years ago as a company providing services to car owners, to drivers, but now is becoming a mobility club. We're embracing change because we know that cities have to deal with those challenges that I mentioned before. So we are moving from this traditional pattern of families owning their own car, which still exist and will exist for some time, but we are also extending our services up to people who practice active mobility, walking, either getting from A to B in public transport, cycling, or even in scooters, electric scooters, which is quite new in cities now. So what we're doing is to create new services. We are creating, starting on top to the left, on a carpooling service for corporations. We are providing a solution that brings together people who traditionally move to the business district area in the single car, each of them, and we're putting them together so they can save money and we can save congestion. We are also building a cyclist community. We are more than 25,000 today in Barcelona and in Catalonia area mainly. And also we are building a MaaS platform, which is called City Trips. It's been started in Spain, but soon will be jumping out to America and the rest of Europe. And also, since we believe that no one single company will do this alone, this big change we need to make, we are building a stakeholder platform called the Mobility Institute, where we are studying the new mobility patterns of citizenship, how people are also embracing change and sharing this knowledge between many different companies in Spain. We have launched this platform 6 months ago, and we are more than 40 mobility companies already, public and private, working together under this umbrella. So for the MaaS solution, mobility as a service should address the problems that I mentioned at the beginning. Should address pollution, should address congestion, should address low occupancy of vehicles. And today we are bundling together many different shared mobility services. And along with the FIA, a World Federation of Clubs, we are moving out to Chile in this month of November, and soon we'll be moving out to Portugal and Italy. And the goal is to build a MaaS solution that is international and brings together public and shared mobility service into one single application. We know many different platforms are building this, and the ultimate goal is to offer to users packages like the ones you can see on screen. We know that people, especially car owners, they spend around 300 euros per month on transportation. This same money could be spent in different services like public transport, shared vehicles, taxis, and so on. And these solutions can be tailored on flat fees to different segments depending on the driving or the mobility patterns of each segment. So this is what we are aiming for. We know this is already being launched in some cities like Helsinki, Vienna, Amsterdam, and we know that this is the way to go. But what we see is that this is what you can find only in Spain, We find a myriad of service providers. Most of them are new, some of them are not that new. But what we see is that there is a big need for, not for business integration that will happen alone because the economics will make it, but we need also service integration, which is building mobility as a service applications. And of course, this cannot happen if cooperation and data sharing are at the core of the MaaS movement. Just to end my presentation, I want to highlight, I want you to go away with some takeaways. Some of them are demands, some other are challenges that mobility as a service is facing. On one hand, demands. We need an open market for transport data. We will not be able to build the MaaS solutions we want if data is not open, and it should be open even if it needs to be done by legislation. They have done this in Finland, the Transportation Act of Finland. I think it's a great example of the way to go. Every single transport operator is obliged to open through their APIs, their services to different aggregators. This is ensuring that consumers will benefit with more innovation, lower prices, and service integration, because consumers don't want to have 10 or 12 different applications on their smartphones. They want a single application or even two, but not more. So we need to put the user on the center. Other challenges that we are facing are the fact of bundling subsidized public transport in these MaaS applications. A private company could benefit from a MaaS solution that includes public transport, which is subsidized. So we need to resolve this in a way. Also, we need to ensure the inclusivity of some segments. Long-term unemployed people, very old people who are not digitalized. How do we bring them and get them benefited from MaaS solutions? We also need to include green economy into MaaS solutions. The carbon footprint should be reflected on the pricing that we get on a MaaS solution. And also, in the end, we need to integrate the promise that mobility as a service will be better for cities. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that shared mobility is put together with public transport in the first and the last mile. If we don't do that, mobility as a service will not bring benefits to citizens. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bergriet.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the mayor of Dunkirk. And Dunkirk is a city of 200,000 inhabitants located in the north of France. One of its characteristic features is to have been completely destroyed during World War II and rebuilt with a heavy focus on cars. Car mobility is therefore very easy in Dunkirk. Consequently, the use of car has steadily increased and reached a very high level in the mid-2010s, particularly for a conurbation of this size. The imbalance of transport modes has harmful consequences. Environmental repercussions in terms of air pollution, a negative impact on land use, as Parking spaces take up 25% of the city center at the expense of housing, therefore inducing a deficit of population in the heart of the city center. Also social ones, as in a city sought for the car, when you don't own one, you find yourself isolated very quickly. Finally, cars are expensive to run. In Dunkirk, inhabitants spend 500,000 euros each day on fuel. It was therefore urgent for the Urban Council to curb the prevalence of cars. In 2014, we launched an ambitious policy to restore the balance between transport modes and decrease the share of the car. The focus was firstly on public transport and bikes to promote an alternative offer to the automobile. Bus lines were completely revamped, the frequency was improved, and major roadworks were initiated to develop dedicated bus lanes. It enabled, in the same time, to renovate numerous public spaces and create new cycling itineraries. Above all, we decided to offer a bus service completely free of charge for everyone and everywhere on the territory. As a result, Dunkirk has become the biggest European conurbation to offer free public transport for all. The free service has entailed a psychological shock, a disruptive logic, which has triggered rapid behavioral change. During the working week, attendance increased by 65% in 1 year and by 125% during the weekend. Almost half of the new trips made by bus used to be made by cars, which proved that the model shift resulting from the new free service is highly effective. Moreover, a third of the bus trips are new. That is to say that the journey was not made before because the person couldn't afford the ticket and gave up on traveling. The free service is therefore inciting Dunkirk's inhabitants to travel more for leisure or to meet relatives and friends and foster social links. The implementation of the free bus system, accompanied by the renovation of the transport network, has enabled us to achieve positive outcomes. We have managed to develop a shared transport culture in a city where the focus on car was dominant. We have addressed the mobility issues of the poorest for a more inclusive city and given more freedom to younger people. We have improved the purchasing power of inhabitants by giving back ticketing revenues, but also by enabling them to save fuel and therefore money that used to go up in smoke. We are currently planning to go a step further, using the digital tool to optimize the potential of the new network, addressing in the meantime the few limits of the project. Today, buses have become frequently visited public spaces and can therefore be useful communication media for urban services. For several months, we have set up a job advertisement device in the bus, which is set off when the bus drives close to a company looking to hire. In the future, the geolocation of information will be used for all the types of communications, making the link between the place where the person is and the information to give. As a result, the information will be more visible and the person more receptive. The digital tool will also enable us to overcome some limits that the network is currently facing. Indeed, the free public transport system is mainly efficient within the dense area of the conurbation. Therefore, the municipality is closer to the center. Today, we want to target journeys within the less dense areas of the conurbation and in industrial areas which are numerous in Dunkirk. To that end, we are currently designing a new digital mobility tool which will allow us, on the one hand, to identify the demand in real time, and on the other hand, to respond to each need by directing the users towards the travel mode the most suited to the particular situation. The answer might not only be the free public transport network, but also an on-demand transport offer which we are expanding, or a carpooling offer. In a nutshell, the digital tool will allow us to articulate a new network to other travel modes. Lastly, as you know, I'm also the chairman of an NGO called France Ville Durable, Sustainable City by France in English, which gathers all French sustainable city stakeholders in the public interest. We have launched a year ago the online hub Sustainable City by France, where you can find numerous projects and resources on sustainable city, which are listed according to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I strongly recommend that you browse this online portal, as more than 400 projects and resources are currently available in free access, including the full assessment of the free bus system published by Dunkirk. You will find there valuable information for anyone interested in smart and sustainable city. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. So the floor is open to the public. You have some microphones on the corridor. So if you feel like asking questions to these fantastic panels, please come. In the meantime, I'd like to ask you one question for all the speakers. Is about, I guess you know that the mayor of London has said that in 2050, London will be the city with the cleanest air in Europe. That's the leitmotif for its city. And after seeing these huge possibilities, solutions that mobility as a service offers to the citizen, what is your personal vision as transformers, as leaders of change? So regarding your city, regarding your domain, regarding your mega city, what is the objective that you could set for 2050? Yeah.
Shall we start? Shall I start?
Yeah.
The objective, I think, for every government official is that we have happy people. And that's the most important thing. And I don't think it's a competition between cities who's got the most cleanest air or whatever. I think we have an obligation for the whole world to have clean air everywhere. And my objective for 2050 is to be climate neutral. That's for sure. But also to have happy people also in 2050, and that our children of the future can have a great life in a city like 's-Hertogenbosch, but it could also be in Dunkirk. No problem.
Great. If you want to.
日本語で、すみません、日本語で喋らせて。横浜市は370万人の人口を抱えています。非常に大きな都市で、これから街を変えていく、チェンジしていく時期にあるんですが、そのモビリティでもそうなんですけど、いろんな環境問題、経済の問題、社会の問題を解決するときに、やはり行政だけでは無理なんで、市民の方、企業の方が本気になって動くということが一番大事だと思います。そのために行政は強いメッセージを出していく、ポリシーを出していくということが大事かなと思っています。
Can we have a microphone for the translator, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
About Yokohama, as we are presented by the Maita, we have very big city with more than 3 million of inhabitants actually, and we need very big changes in 3 sectors: mobility, of course, and environmental questions, and society, contribution to our society. 3 points of change. For these changes, we have to work together in collaboration and cooperation among authorities, local authorities, Yokohama cities, and our citizens, people, and private sector like big companies, of course. But to make this collaboration between public and public sectors, we, the Yokohama City authorities, has to have a big and strong message for the people. That's what I think. Thank you.
それで先ほど横浜シティ、横浜デザインセンター SDGs デザインセンターというのをご紹介しましたが、我々は積極的に大企業、中小企業、いろんな技術を持った人たちに入ってきていただく、横浜に来ていただくということの仕掛けが先ほどのデザインセンターです。
And I presented you before in my panels a design center. This is a new structure in the Yokohama city, and this center is objective is welcome to the public and private sector, many institutes and many societies and companies, big, not only big, but small and medium company also very welcome to our project.
Thank you. Luis?
I believe that 250 for having clean air is very late. Actually, I think we can have clean air much earlier, especially if the next decade we're going to rise electrification of transport. So in cities we should have clean air in, at least in Europe, in the next decade for sure. What we need for 2050 is to be carbon neutral, zero carbon emissions. That's what we need, the planet needs, and the whole humankind needs. So that's for sure the target we need to focus.
Great.
Yes. What is important is that each city find its solution, because the solution will be dependent on the local context, on the history. For example, Dunkirk is a good example. I think in democratic cities, nothing can be done without population or against population. And it's the responsibility of the political representative, of the mayors, to find the solution which corresponds to the population. It's very important in democratic cities. So it's the responsibility for the mayor to find the good solutions.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. This is not a competition, but it's a leitmotif to push for some objectives. And it's great to see that most of us share the objectives and the vision of the future. Anyone on the public want to join? Please come stand up and introduce yourself at the microphone here in the corridor. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Florencia, and I wanted to ask Luis about the MaaS platforms. So who do you think should run and manage these platforms? So if it's not the public sector, if it's the private sector, how do you avoid monopoly? How do you avoid the interest to be in the middle? So for example, I know Google Maps sometimes gives me the option to hire Lime bicycles, even when I say that I want to walk from point A to B. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. I believe that probably in the European context, at least, the European Commission should legislate on this. If we leave the market alone, it would well happen that big platforms, the GAFA big players take over this ecosystem, because they have the money to do that and the resources. So we have to ensure that there is a fair playing ground for all companies. I think in Europe we have to build a different model. We don't have internet champions, so we have to make sure that competition will be possible. And this, I have the perfect example for this, or a good starting point, is the Finland's Transportation Act, where every transport operator has to open up their APIs so any other party can take them and build a new solution for transportation. This is essential for Europe if we want to have our own model, if we want to preserve our way of life in the end, because as I said, we don't have these big players that China or the US have, so we have to create our own model. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Hayat Vidri and I work for Bird. I run the public policy team in Benelux and Southern Europe. And my question is to the mayor of Hertogenbosch.
Very good.
Ja, ik praat Nederlands, maar hij is echt moeilijk, de naam van. Yeah. So my question to you, I mean, I heard your comments about electric steps, and I think that the city is actually quite great for bicycles. So I'm extremely curious, why do you think that your city has the infrastructure for bikes, but not for steps? Because what we have actually seen, we're a company that works in more than 120 cities across the world, and what we've seen is that cities that are safe for bikes are actually quite safe for scooters, and there is not really a difference between the two vehicles from a safety perspective. Thank you.
I understand your question, and it's also a question where I'm struggling about, because the problem is that our set of the infrastructure of our roads is car, bike, and the bikes are only like 15 kilometers an hour. The steps are going much faster, and they're going also on the sidewalks and on the street and on the biking path. And we don't have legislation in the Netherlands about new forms of smart mobility. I think that's a problem of our country, because we didn't allow electric steps in our streets yet for the whole country, because it's prohibited. So I think on a European perspective, we are a little bit behind as the Netherlands, but I think we have to think further if our new infrastructure for the future, if our roads are set for new forms of mobility for the future. Nowadays it's a step. What is it in 2 years? I don't know. And are we adaptive enough as a government to adapt our infrastructure to new forms of smart mobility? And that's I think, a challenge for us as a local government, because the investments are in roads who are financed for like 40 or 60 years, and the new forms of mobility are only there for like 6 or 7 years. And how can we fit those two forms of difference in speed? How can we bring them together? It's a struggle.
Yeah. Anyone else from the public? We have 5 minutes to go. If there is no questions, I will. In this case, I take advantage of my position as moderator, and I will ask you one question that everyone asks to me normally. That is, in your opinion, what is the future of private mobility, of private vehicle? That's a good one.
Is there a future for private mobility? I think there is a future for private choices, but I'm not sure if it's private mobility. I'm very enthusiastic about your story about means of transportation, and your personal use of transportation is more important. So I think it's more of a personal choice than a personal mean, and I think that's the future.
Good. I'd like to see the perspective from Japan.
自転車ですね。先ほども言ったそのいろんな社会問題と一緒に解決していく一つの大きなツールだなっていうのが一つと、それから日本はその先ほどの二輪車 っていうのはヨーロッパほど進んでないです。まだ遅れているので、このバルセロナもそうですけども、ボッシュの皆さん、ヨーロッパの街をですね、非常に進んでいるところを日本も勉強して進んでいきたいなと思います。
Yeah, I'd like to comment about bicycles problem. In our state in Barcelona, we saw many mobility system and bicycle, especially. And I think in Japan, the bicycle system is not so developed like in a European city like in Barcelona. So we like to focus more and more in the future at this point. Thank you.
Luis?
I think that if we leave the economics alone, there will still be cases in which being the owner of a vehicle will make sense. If you do 30,000 kilometers a year, it probably is more economic to have your own vehicle and to use it. And we also have to think that cities are growing, cities are concentrating population, but the countryside still exists, and there has to be a relation between the two. We cannot leave the countryside away or alone or have a big gap between the way of living between the two. Personal mobility provides you the opportunity to connect these two worlds, and we should not lose that also. So we should not be very, very rigid into thinking there has to be shared, everything has to be shared. No, there could be options where having your own vehicle makes sense.
So there's still light for private vehicles.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, why not?
There will be less, for sure. Yeah.
And from the point of view of France, because you're a huge manufacturer of vehicles with different enterprises linked to the industry, I'm not sure of your position because it has quite a lot of impact. I see that your case is different, but just let me put you in context. In our side, 10% of the PIB, the PIB, the Spanish PIB is about automotion, so it's quite a huge impact. I guess for Japan it's as well a huge impact, so we need to transform and rethink how we reorient that sector. And what about you in your context within France?
En français, en deux mots.
En français. La question c'est comment vous envisagez depuis la France et dans votre contexte, dans votre ville, les futurs de la voiture privée, du véhicule privé.
Yeah, I think it's more a problem of balance between transport modes. We need personal mobility. It was said in the less dense areas of the conurbation, we need personal mobility. But in the dense part of the conurbation, we have to re-equilibrate the balance between transport modes. In Dunkirk, it's the problem. It's because it's too disequilibrated, in fact, in favor of the personal mobility. So I think more about transition between new balance of transport modes.
Thank you. Well, please, from this panel, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and I think Victoria is going to wrap up the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very insightful panel and the presentation that came before. So wrapping up this session, talking about mobility as a service, I've definitely learned that cities value the social aspect definitely much more than other aspects that come to it. So Sertan Bosch has shared that social innovation has to be by technology innovation, and innovation cannot happen without public involvement, so you have to include your citizens in that. And the same line, Yokohama was also sharing that social sustainability is important for the mobility of the future. And this can be enabled by either free public transportation, which we've seen in France, or most importantly also by bundling and making it as easy as possible for the passenger to move around with or without a private car. So to have a one-stop solution to be able to book a ride at the mode that is most convenient for the use case the passenger has in mind at this specific moment. So I think we've seen great examples from all over the world how mobility as a service is already happening today. And it will be very exciting for me to come back next year and see what has happened in those, but also in other cities. So thank you very much to all the presentators, panelists, volunteering to come here today. And thank you very much for listening and contributing to the discussion.